UK Daily Coffee, Yvette Cooper investigation. Picture this: you're having a lovely Friday evening, scrolling through the news, when suddenly you stumble across a story so absolutely bonkers that you nearly drop your tea. The Home Secretary of Great Britain, the person supposedly in charge of keeping us all safe, is being accused of basically telling child abuse victims to jog on. Welcome back to UK Daily Coffee, where we brew the strongest political tea in the country, and today's blend is particularly bitter. I'm talking about Yvette Cooper, our Home Secretary, who's found herself in the kind of political hot water that makes even seasoned Westminster watchers reach for the emergency biscuits. She's being accused of flat-out refusing to investigate police officers who allegedly raped children who were victims of grooming gangs in Rotherham. Yes, you heard that correctly. Police officers raping children. And the Home Secretary apparently thinks an investigation isn't necessary. Now, before we dive headfirst into this absolute clusterfuck of a story, let me just say that if you're easily shocked by tales of institutional incompetence, corruption, and the kind of moral bankruptcy that would make a Victorian workhouse overseer blush, you might want to grab a strong coffee. Because what we're about to unpack makes your average political scandal look like a vicar's tea party. 5 women, 5 survivors of childhood grooming gangs, have come forward with allegations that would make your blood run cold. They're claiming police officers sexually assaulted them when they were children. Not just any kind of assault, but rape. In police cars. While they were already victims of horrific abuse. It's like something out of a dystopian nightmare, except it's allegedly happening in South Yorkshire, not some fictional hellscape. The level of betrayal here is absolutely staggering. These were children who should have been protected by the very people who are now accused of exploiting them. It's like finding out the fire brigade has been going around starting fires, except infinitely worse because we're talking about the systematic abuse of vulnerable children. Nick Timothy, the former No. 10 Chief of Staff who clearly hasn't lost his taste for dropping political bombshells, revealed on Friday that Cooper has been rejecting demands for a National Crime Agency probe since January. January! That's nearly a year of essentially telling abuse survivors that their allegations aren't worth investigating properly. Timothy didn't mince his words either, calling it harrowing that 10 years after these allegations first surfaced, not a single officer has been brought to justice. Think about that for a moment. 10 years. A full decade of these allegations floating around, and what has happened? Sweet bugger all. It's like watching a snail race in reverse. These aren't allegations of officers nicking a few biscuits from the station canteen. We're talking about claims of child rape in police vehicles and the use of drugs to coerce victims. Timothy put it perfectly when he said this could not be more serious. But here's where it gets even more mental, if that's possible. The accusations include claims that victims were raped in police cars and then threatened with being returned to their original abusers if they didn't comply. It's like the worst possible version of good cop, bad cop, except there are no good cops in this scenario. One survivor's testimony is particularly harrowing. She described how an officer threatened to deliver her to the grooming gang unless she performed sexual acts on him. Her response reveals the impossible choice these children faced: I would rather be raped once, or give one man oral sex, than to be taken somewhere where I know it'd be 15, 20 guys one after another. That was just easier. Let that sink in for a moment. A child was forced to calculate which form of sexual abuse would be less traumatic. And the person making this threat wasn't a criminal gang member, but allegedly a police officer. Someone who had sworn to protect and serve. It's enough to make you lose faith in humanity entirely. The legal representatives for these women have revealed that their clients have identified an additional 4 South Yorkshire police officers as alleged perpetrators. For more. And that's just from the survivors who've been brave enough to come forward. How many more are out there, too traumatized or too scared to speak up? The scope of this alleged corruption is expanding faster than a Tory expenses scandal. We've now got allegations involving a Greater Manchester police officer as well, accused of sexual abuse by another survivor. It's like a particularly grim game of whack-a-mole, except instead of cute cartoon creatures popping up, it's allegations of child abuse by the very people who should be preventing it. But here's the part that will really boil your piss. These initial allegations against officers emerged a decade ago. A full 10 years, and what's happened? Not a single prosecution. Not one. It's like the police have developed a special superpower, the ability to investigate themselves and somehow never find any wrongdoing. Shocking, absolutely shocking. South Yorkshire Police are currently investigating these allegations, which is a bit like asking Count Dracula to investigate a series of mysterious neck puncture wounds in the local village. Critics are understandably shocked that the force has been trusted to investigate its own staff, citing cover-up after cover-up. And honestly, who could have seen that coming? It's not like police forces have ever had a problem with investigating themselves before. The web of corruption gets even more tangled when you look at the 2016 trial of the Rotherham gang. Claims surfaced that leader Basharat Hussain had a CID detective on his payroll who revealed a safe house location protecting a vulnerable girl. So not only were officers allegedly abusing children themselves, but they were potentially helping other abusers access their victims. It's corruption layered on corruption, like the world's most disgusting lasagna. Maggie Oliver, a whistleblower formerly with Greater Manchester Police, has revealed that she received orders to abandon her 2004 investigation into a suspected child rapist serving in the force. When she returned from compassionate leave, she discovered the whole job had been buried. Buried. Like evidence of child abuse is just something you can sweep under the carpet and hope nobody notices. The Independent Office for Police Conduct, that beacon of accountability and justice, conducted an investigation into 47 officers. 47? And what was the result of this thorough investigation? 2 written warnings and 0 prosecutions. 2 written warnings. For allegations involving child rape. It's like getting a parking ticket for running over a pedestrian. The complete disconnect between the severity of the allegations and the consequences is absolutely mind-boggling. Professor Alexis J., whose public inquiry uncovered 1,400 child victims of Rotherham grooming gangs, has said it's very hard to see the justification for South Yorkshire Police to investigate its own officers. J suggested it would have been cleaner all round to simply ask another police to investigate this. You know, like how normal investigations work when there's a conflict of interest. Revolutionary thinking, really. Even Hayley Barnett, Assistant Chief Constable of South Yorkshire Police, has admitted she's acutely aware of how profoundly difficult, if not impossible, it is for victims to report to her force. Well, yes, Hayley, I imagine it would be quite difficult to report police abuse to the police. It's like trying to report a burglary to the burglar. Not exactly conducive to building trust or encouraging victims to come forward. Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp has formally requested that Cooper establish an independent investigation, which seems like the absolute bare minimum response to allegations of this magnitude. It's not exactly asking for the moon, is it? Just a proper, independent investigation into whether police officers rape children. You'd think that would be the kind of thing that gets fast-tracked, not stonewalled. The Home Office, in their infinite wisdom, has responded with the kind of bureaucratic word salad that would make even the most seasoned civil servant proud. They've announced a new national police operation, led by the NCA, that will ensure that every historic case is fully investigated, that the perpetrators are put behind bars, and that the victims of these appalling crimes receive the justice they deserve. Lovely words, but survivors have been hearing similar promises for a decade now. What makes this whole situation even more infuriating is the pattern we've seen time and time again. Allegations surface, investigations are promised, reviews are conducted, reports are published, lessons are said to be learned, and then somehow, mysteriously, very little actually changes. It's like Groundhog Day, but with institutional failure and child abuse. The fact that Yvette Cooper has been rejecting calls for an independent investigation since January raises serious questions about her priorities and judgment. These aren't allegations about expenses, fiddles, or inappropriate tweets. We're talking about police officers allegedly raping children who were already victims of horrific abuse. If that doesn't warrant an independent investigation, what exactly does? Cooper's position seems to be that the existing processes are sufficient, but the track record suggests otherwise. 10 years of existing processes have resulted in precisely 0 prosecutions. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results, and that's exactly what seems to be happening here. The survivors who have come forward deserve better than bureaucratic foot-dragging and institutional cover-ups. They've already endured unimaginable trauma as children, and now they're being forced to fight tooth and nail just to get their allegations properly investigated. It's a second victimization, courtesy of the very system that should be protecting them. What's particularly galling is that these women have found the courage to speak up about horrific abuse, identifying specific officers and providing detailed allegations, and the response from the Home Secretary has essentially been to shrug and say the current system is fine. It's not fine. It's demonstrably not fine. A system that produces 0 prosecutions from 47 investigated officers is not a system that's working. The broader implications of this story extend far beyond the specific allegations against these officers. If police forces can't be trusted to properly investigate their own members accused of child abuse, what else are they failing to investigate properly? How many other victims are out there, too scared or too traumatized to come forward? How many other cover-ups are happening right now? This isn't just about individual bad apples, though there are clearly some very rotten apples in this particular barrel. This is about systemic failure, institutional protection of abusers, and a culture that prioritizes the reputation of the force over the safety of children. It's about a Home Secretary who seems more concerned with avoiding embarrassment than ensuring justice for survivors. The fact that we're still having this conversation in 2024, more than a decade after the Rotherham scandal first broke, shows how little has really changed. We've had inquiries, reviews, reports, promises, and pledges, but when push comes to shove, the same patterns of denial, delay, and cover-up persist. Yvette Cooper needs to explain why she thinks these allegations don't warrant an independent investigation. She needs to explain why the existing system, which has failed spectacularly for 10 years, is suddenly going to start working. She needs to explain why survivors should trust a process that has produced 0 justice for a decade. Most importantly, she needs to remember that her job isn't to protect police officers or government departments from embarrassment. Her job is to keep the public safe, and that includes ensuring that those entrusted with power don't abuse it in the most horrific ways imaginable. The survivors who have come forward have shown incredible courage in speaking out against powerful institutions that would clearly prefer their silence. They deserve better than political calculation and bureaucratic stonewalling. They deserve justice, they deserve truth, and they deserve a Home Secretary who prioritizes their safety over institutional convenience. This story isn't going away, no matter how much Cooper might wish it would. The pressure is mounting, the questions are getting harder to avoid, and the moral bankruptcy of the current approach is becoming impossible to ignore. The longer she delays, the worse it looks, and the more it appears that protecting police officers accused of child rape is more important than protecting children from police officers. That's all from today's UK Daily Coffee political brewing session. If stories like this make your blood boil as much as they do mine, make sure you're subscribed and hit that notification bell because trust me, in British politics, there's always another scandal brewing just around the corner. We'll be here every day, serving up the strongest political analysis with a side of righteous indignation, because someone needs to keep calling out this absolute madness. Until tomorrow, keep questioning, keep demanding better, and remember that sometimes the most important stories are the ones that make us most uncomfortable. Cheers!